In Stellaris, you can choose to create your own empire from scratch, or choose one of the pre-mades that come with the game. No matter what you choose, there are a ton of different playstyles to choose from, and understanding each one can sometimes feel like learning the game from scratch all over again. I thought I'd go through and explain each of the pre-made empires to give you an idea about their preferred playstyle, and how you can use them to get the most value. Now there are quite a few to go through, so I'll try and keep things as simple as possible to save us some time. Without further ado, let's begin. United Nations of Earth. These are the most diplomatic of the humanoid empires, as their xenophile nature and democratic principles tee them up excellently for a game full of strong relations and alliances with other willing empires. But don't be fooled by their fanaticism for equality. They do not shy away from war, and can and will declare wars just as often as they have them declared on them. You want to use their increased unity output to rush traditions and choose edicts that push your faction with a strong focus on the galactic diplomacy, trade, and eventually a federation to maintain peace and order. The Commonwealth of Man. These guys are more or less the opposite of the United Nations of Earth. Rather than diplomacy and welcoming other species with open arms, they prefer to keep to themselves and other humanoids, and instead use war and combat to communicate. Their entire focus is on war, as everything they have feeds into this playstyle. They gain war exhaustion slower, can place claims for cheaper, have more powerful admirals, have faster firing ships, and can build star bases for cheaper. You want to aggressively expand and take down anyone who stands in your way from controlling the entire galaxy. If they're going to live, it's going to be in service or as an ally to you, and nothing more. The Technocracy. These guys lie somewhere in the middle of the other two humanoid empires, as they don't really care one way or the other for diplomacy, and instead simply want to increase their knowledge of the universe through science and research. They don't want to dominate the galaxy, they simply want to exist within it. They are smart and resourceful, and with their strong leadership, they want to expand and sink as many resources into science as they can to eclipse other empires technologically as quickly as possible. They have no desire to fight, but have no qualms against it, if it's a necessary step to discovery. The Cooperative. Now these are one of the most socialist empires in Stellaris, so automatically get gold star of approval from me. Strangely enough, they are fairly open to most playstyles, with their traits being useful for most methods. Their cheaper buildings and more dense population lends itself well to pretty much any playstyle, whether you're rushing science, economy, or even military. You'll have plenty of resources for whatever you do. They also gain unity very easily, so rushing traditions to fit your chosen playstyle will be no problem, and you can make full use of edicts to enhance whichever decision you choose. Orbis Customer Synergies. These are the first of the mega corporations, and like most corporations, they are reptiles and get no maidens. All kidding aside, these are an excellent empire for building tall whilst making friends with as many other empires as possible to make the most of your branch offices and trade value. Your focus wants to be on economy and making as much money as possible and using this to get what you want. You can of course use this income to fund fleets and armies, but since your focus wants to be on building tall, wars for the sake of expansion are of little use to you. Instead, you want to simply defend yourself or vassalize weaker empires to support your economy even further. The Chinor Combine. These are more toward the military side of megacorporations, with their militarist traits allowing them to claim foreign systems and have more powerful ships to take them. You still want to focus on building tall rather than wide, and make as much cash as possible, but now you can use that pretty insane income to fight other empires and expand your business in a more direct way. You can also build a little wider than most other megacorps, with their private colony ships allowing less empire strain from new systems. They're also quite science focused, with their intelligence and materialistic traits allowing them to research faster and progress their economy, and therefore empire ahead with knowledge as well as income. The Hasbuzan Syndicates. These lads are the only megacorp that is openly criminal. Whereas the others seek to make their money in quote honest ways, the Hasbuze benefit from crime wherever they go. Their branch officers directly benefit from higher crime rates, and they can even increase it with certain buildings to further this income. Of all the megacorporations, these guys have the strongest focus on building tall, with them benefiting from building a ton of branch officers and subjugating other empires rather than expanding their own. Their enthusiasm for military directly supports this, and will allow you to crush other empires under the might of your fleets and bend them to your will with ease. The Tebrid Homologue are the first of our AIs, and what a fun playstyle they have. These lads don't give a single shit about anyone or anything but themselves. Their one focus is to expand their reach as much as possible until there is nothing but them. All other empires simply exist to be assimilated, meaning you can declare war on anyone at any time simply for the purposes of assimilating their population into your own, either by creating cyborgs or purging those who won't change. Your own population is made up of machines who live forever, so you rarely need to worry about replacing leaders in every aspect of your empire. They are excellent in war as they gain exhaustion slower and can use their enhanced research to build bigger and better ships to take on your foes with ease. This science focus also allows them to pursue a tech victory if you prefer a more passive playstyle, but where's the fun in that? The only downside is their expensive components, but you really are paying for the best. These are also obviously my favourite empire that I've played so far. The The Earth Custodianship. As AIs go, these are the most welcoming to other species, as they were originally designed to be servant bots. This allows them to have biotrophy pops, which are essentially pampered organic beings that can produce influence for the faction while contributing next to nothing, just like real billionaires. They're also slightly better at diplomacy, with them having more envoys to spread their influence far and wide whichever direction that may be moving. They're also resourceful with their increased amenities production alongside reduced housing usage, which makes them into very easy pops to take care of if you don't count the increased upkeep. If you want to play as a robot and not just annihilate every single person you meet, these are the AI for you. The XT-489 Eliminator. As a complete contrast to the custodians, these boys are hellbent on exterminating every organic lifeform they come across. They can declare wars on anyone at any time for the sole purpose of purifying the galaxy, and will purge any organic pops from their empire upon capturing a planet. They excel at this with their increased army damage and reduced upkeep, allowing you to amass forces that no planet can stand up to. They are perhaps the fastest growing of the AIs, with increased mineral output and assembly speed, allowing them to build through the map at a breakneck pace. They may not have the best amenities creation, and yeah, they take up a lot of housing, but does that really matter, as long as you're only housing inorganics? The zaniduzerainty. These are another empire that's kinda in the middle, so you can do whatever they want. Most of their traits allow them to hoard influence and unity, making them into a powerful diplomatic faction, but at the same time they are pretty good at science and espionage, so you can really take them in any direction you want. Whatever you do, you'll benefit from that science, general resource production, and wise old leaders, so try whatever you fancy and do alright. Oh, maybe have some fun with the slave markets. They seem to have a thing for that. The lochen mechanists. These guys are some world-class nerds. They love engineering and get boosts to that branch of research alongside the rest from the materialist and technocracy traits. They work best when living alongside robots, as they grant massively reduced upkeep and can rapidly populate planets and create a bunch of hardworking super pops that churn out resources at breakneck speed. Diplomatically, you can play them however you want, but their science buffs can give them the advantage in wars if you choose to go that way, and robots are always fun to see in combat. And finally, they will have some pretty powerful leaders with an increased level cap and be quicker to reach it, leading to some great buffs for everything in your empire. The Exodar Star Collective. These are our only hive mind and can be one seriously fun empire to play as. They're kind of like the organic version of the AIs we saw earlier that seek to assimilate the entire galaxy until all that there is part of the collective. They can build wide or tall excellently with their reduced empire size and massively increased pop growth speed, meaning they can colonize and grow planets at a rapid rate for huge benefit. And no worries if it's too fast and you have some unemployed pops, they produce science just by sitting there and will be more than happy to do so. And of course, they have a very casual approach to war and will be happy to declare it and fight as much as you want with the reduced war exhaustion and increased army damage. The Mower caretakers. These are a very strange empire, as they are basically a network of plants that wants to spread through the galaxy without really stepping on anyone if they can help it. They can progressively terraform planets into Gaia worlds through buildings way before anyone else can even think of the word terraforming. They also gain bonuses to agriculture with more powerful districts and increased outputs. The only real downsides to them are their slow breeding and pacifism, meaning you can only take part in defensive wars rather than aggressive, which can be a bit of a pain if you need to remove someone before they become too much of a problem. But if you can't handle that and want to roleplay Space Poison Ivy, go right ahead. Keepers of Azan. These are similar to the Mower in the sense that they are more passive and want to grow through the galaxy and preserve it, rather than exploit it to the death. But instead of food, these boys prefer minerals with more from jobs, which helps since they consume them instead of food, which results in slow growth but healthier pops, and means more army health and longer lifespans for your leaders. Their spiritualism grants them some powerful unity effects and allows them to make more use of edicts to tip things into their favour more often than not. Again, the only downside is that pacifist nature, but again, you can get most people to declare war on you if you try hard enough, so it could be worse. The Pashati Absorbers. Necroids are some of the most fun playstyles, if a little bit complicated to play. Instead of the standard pop growth of, well, birth, they instead consume the pops of other species and use that to create more of themselves. This results in much slower growth and a little less work output, but much longer lifespans, less resource consumption, and more specialist output. They can also consume consumer goods to produce science and even naval capacity, and can resurrect undead armies to fight for them, as well as some organic leviathans. They are essentially the vampire counts of Stellaris, so I love them. Aside from all this, they are also cutthroat politicians, which basically means they are good at it and can use edicts cheaper and are better at code breaking. They're also, of course, xenophobic militarists, because any other empire only exists to be consumed to make more of the Necroids. The Saphirelian Bliss. Similar to the Mower and the Azan, the Bliss are another empire that's a lot more peaceful and environmentally conscious than most. As a result of this, they have an easier time maintaining pops and can amass a lot more of them before feeling empire strain. Additionally, since they prefer to live underwater, instead of farmers, they have anglers and pearl divers, which allow them to farm trade value alongside regular food and consumer goods, meaning extra cash for your districts. Their approach to war and diplomacy is to keep to themselves and don't go bothering others, so you'll only be able to take part in defensive wars rather than enforcing your will on the galaxy. They of course prefer to live underwater, so start on a huge ocean world and get bonuses to output when living on one. The only downside is the slower lead XP, but that's not exactly the end of the world. The Sin Empire. The Sin are an empire built on slaves and a firm hand. They are a police state which grants unity from enforcers, meaning keeping your planets under firm control is even more encouraged than usual. Their Slavers Guild allows slaves to have an increased resource output and higher ratio of slaves to non-slaves to get work done cheaper. They are also, of course, a strong military empire and receive all the bonuses that brings, allowing them to easily wage war alongside their authoritarian society, resulting in a higher output and more influence. They are a tough lot to invade, as their people are strong and resilient, meaning their armies are seriously hard to get rid of. Of course, with the slaves, they are a touch decadent, and of course aren't the most laid back of people, but the slight debuff to happiness and job output is a drop in the ocean compared to the value earned from the slave markets. The Kingdom of Yonderim. These lads are essentially a cult with a monarchy, so not exactly the best combo. Their cult society allows them to have a massive edicts fund as your people are more willing to follow what the leadership says. The elites of society work as politicians or nobles, allowing you to train more elite governors than others. Their combo of authoritarian and spiritual fanaticism makes them a people that generate a lot of resources and pour these resources into government edicts to further the progress of the empire. They also have an affinity for physics and slower learning leaders, but neither of these things will have a lot of effects, so you shouldn't worry too hard, but maybe lean on physics techs and pick young leaders to give them lots of time. The Theglesbig Foundation. These are another cult-like society, but not quite as severe. Instead of the nobles, they still have the ruling oligarchs, but the majority of high-class pops are priests set on uniting the empire and generating a nice bit of unity for you. They are friendly with other empires that love to trade and take part in lots of diplomacy to make as many friends and allies as possible. They get a ton of buffs to unity and edicts, so you want to be making the most of them to push your empire further in whatever direction you choose. If you're looking for a direction, then you can't go too far wrong with economic, as those connections from earlier can net you some serious cash. Their people are slow-moving, but long-living, and hard to move, alongside a bit cheaper to maintain. The Jerhetma Dominion. These are a people occupied with the big questions rather than the small ones. This means they prefer to accumulate wealth and knowledge rather than take part in wars to take from others. This does mean you can only do defensive wars, but you have a ton of buffs making more resources, so while you keep them to yourself, you can gain a lot of allies through economic persuasion. They may not grow their colonies the fastest, but they are cheap to house and maintain, and once you do get some leaders online, they will gain some pretty large brains by the end of their lives. If you're looking for a diplomacy and economy-based game, these are a great choice. The Skildary Confederacy. These are one of the most wholesome empires we have. They have cheaper to take care of pops, which are much happier with their jobs. Alongside this, their affinity for social research means you can create colonies with better and better living standards, meaning every empire in the game will have their pops flocking to come over to live with you. Their free haven combined with the pacifist xenophiles means you'll have an easy time making friends and welcoming their pops with open arms to expand your empire and culture through peace and unity. If you want to avoid wars and have more of a chill game, then these are a good way to go. The Azan Republic. As a total contrast, these boys are totally focused on dedicating the art of war. Pretty much everything they have fuels their fighting in some way or another. Instead of entertainers, they have duelists who use alloys to create unity, amenities, and naval capacity, as well as granting them 20% bonus army damage, making for difficult to take planets, especially combined with their very strong traits. You also get a passive gain to military capacity from compulsory military service for all citizens. The egalitarian is nice for unity and even more resource production, but the fanatic militarist part is really the main bit. They love wars and do well in them, so declare away and remove anyone that stands in your way. And finally, being solitary deviants isn't too bad. I mean, that describes me pretty well, so I'm just going to move on. And finally, the Blorg commonality. Aside from having the best name, the Blorg are a bit of a weird one. They welcome in any foreign species with open arms and love immigration, but can also have more powerful armies and love a good bit of war. You can play to make friends with everyone you meet, or declare wars left, right, and centre to establish dominance that way. It's very strange, but leaves the door open for you to play them however you want, so that's fun. Also, pour one out for my lads who are literally so ugly, they live alone and produce less amenities. Big rips. And I still think you're cute, bloggy baby. And that is every empire in Stellaris explained. Apologise if this went on too long or if I repeat myself a bunch. A lot of these guys are similar in many ways with some slight differences here and there, and that's really part of what makes Stellaris so replayable. Change one thing and you have a whole new empire to play with. Anyway, thank you if you made it this far, I really do appreciate you. If you want to see more Stellaris content, then let me know with a like and subscribe to see it as soon as it comes out. And finally, I'd like to take this time to thank all supporters of the channel, like Adam T, Dominic Schmass, and of course Henry Tucker for his support and the Unclean Ones tier. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so here on YouTube by becoming a member, head on over to the Patreon and become a patron, or become a sub on Twitch. I promise I'm going to stream again, just need to get moved into my new house, which should be happening very soon. Huge thank you to every single supporter, one final thank you for watching, and for now, I've been COLONELDAMNEDERS, and I will see you next turn.